The Anderson Medical Research Center had never seemed so cold as it did that rainy Tuesday morning, watching security escort me from the building. 5 years of research, countless sleepless nights, and a theory that could change everything, all dismissed as wasteful and delusional. Dr. Chen, Dr. Margaret Walsh called from the lobby doors, her voice dripping with false concern. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Your funding is gone, your lab is reassigned, and your theories," she smirked. "Well, let's just say the board was very clear about their opinion of your work." I clutched my box of personal items closer, feeling the weight of my research laptop inside. They'd let me keep it, thinking all my data was already backed up to their servers. They were wrong. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and until today, I was a leading cancer researcher at one of America's most prestigious medical institutions. But I committed the cardinal sin of medical research. I questioned the established paradigm. "At least let me show you the latest trial results," I pleaded. "The protein markers are enough." Dr. Walsh's voice sharpened. "Your obsession with these alternative pathways is embarrassing. Real scientists follow the evidence, not wild hunches about cellular behavior." If she only knew what the evidence really showed. Thunder rumbled overhead as I walked to my car, my mind racing back to how this all started. 3 years ago, I'd noticed something odd in my cancer treatment trials. A pattern that shouldn't exist according to current medical understanding. A subset of patients was responding to treatment in ways that defied conventional oncology. But it wasn't just random variation. There was a pattern, a hidden pathway in how cancer cells evolved and adapted. One that, if understood properly, could revolutionize how we approach treatment. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom Jong in the lab. "They're already clearing out your space. Walsh is telling everyone you had a breakdown." But I saved copies of everything before they wiped the servers. Good old Tom. He'd been my research assistant for 2 years, the only other person who'd seen the full data and understood its implications. "The secure server?" I texted back. "Untouched. They don't know it exists." I smiled, thinking of the private research server we'd set up months ago, anticipating this day might come. Walsh and the board thought they'd seized all my research data. They had no idea that the most important findings were safely encrypted and stored elsewhere. The thing about cancer research is that it's not just about the science. It's about funding, reputations, and established methodologies. Question those, and you become a threat. I learned that lesson 3 months ago when I first presented my preliminary findings to the board. "This is nonsense," Walsh had declared, not even bothering to hide her disdain. "You're suggesting that everything we know about cancer cell evolution is incomplete." "Not incomplete," I corrected, "just viewed through the wrong lens. The traditional model misses crucial adaptive behaviors. Look at these response patterns." But they hadn't wanted to look. Traditional cancer research brought in millions in funding. My approach threatened that comfortable paradigm. What they didn't know was that I'd already started a small, unofficial trial. 20 terminal patients who'd exhausted all conventional treatments. Patients who, according to every accepted medical model, should have died months ago. Patients who were now showing remarkable improvements. My apartment felt empty that evening as I set up my makeshift research station on the dining room table. My laptop connected to the secure server, displaying data that would make Walsh and the board choke on their certainties. The protein markers were unmistakable. Cancer cells weren't just mutating randomly, they were following a predictable pattern of adaptation. One that, once understood, could be turned against them. My phone rang. Dr. Sarah Williams from Johns Hopkins. "Sarah," she said when I answered, "I just heard about Anderson. Those idiots." I'd met Sarah at a conference last year, where she'd shown unusual interest in my wild theories. "They seized all my official research," I told her. "But not everything, I hope." The question was careful, measured. "No, the important data is safe." "Good," she paused. "Because I have something you need to see. Remember those anomalous results I mentioned in my leukemia trials?" My heart started racing. The same protein markers. Exactly the same. "And Sarah, 3 of my terminal patients are in remission. Completely clean scans. It's not supposed to be possible." I sat down hard, my mind spinning. Independent confirmation from one of the most respected oncologists in the country. "We need to meet," I said. "But not here. They'll be watching." Already planned. There's a medical conference in Denver next week. Walsh and her crowd won't attend. It's too small for their egos. But there's someone you need to meet. He's been running similar trials in Stockholm. I glanced at my screen, where patient data showed the impossible terminal cancer patients recovering through a treatment protocol that, according to Walsh and the board, was worthless. Send me the details. Already did. And Sarah? Bring everything. It's time to show the world what they dismissed. After hanging up, I dove back into the data. The pattern was becoming clearer with each analysis. Cancer cells didn't just mutate to resist treatment, they followed predictable evolutionary pathways. Understanding those pathways was the key to defeating them. My phone buzzed again. A message from one of my trial patients. Dr. Chen, my latest scan. The tumors are shrinking. The doctors can't explain it. What you did, you saved my life. I thought of Walsh and the board, so certain in their dismissal. They called my research worthless, my theories delusional. They tried to bury discoveries that could save millions, all to protect their funding and reputations. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They thought stopping official trials would end the research. They didn't realize that 20 patients were already proving them wrong. That doctors like Sarah Williams were seeing the same patterns. That somewhere in Stockholm, more evidence was mounting. Tomorrow, I'd book my flight to Denver. In 1 week, everything would change. But first, I had data to analyze. Because while Walsh and her colleagues were writing me off as a failed researcher, patients were living who should have died. And their survival told a story that would shake the foundations of cancer treatment. The rain pounded against my windows as I worked through the night, each data point adding to a picture that was becoming impossible to dismiss. I thought of my mother, lost to cancer 10 years ago because conventional treatments failed her. Sometimes, she told me near the end, the biggest breakthroughs come from the ideas everyone else rejects. She was right, and soon the world would understand why. Part 2. The Paradigm Shift. The Denver Medical Research Conference looked unimpressive from the outside, a modest hotel conference center far from the glamorous venues where Walsh and her colleagues preferred to present. But as I walked into the basement meeting room, I knew this was where real science was happening. Dr. Chen. Dr. Eric Larson from Stockholm approached, hand extended. Your protein marker analysis changed everything we thought we knew about cellular adaptation. I studied him, older, distinguished, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. This was the researcher Sarah Williams had mentioned, who'd been seeing the same patterns in his trials. Show her. Sarah called from her laptop. Show her what happened with your terminal patients. For the next hour, we compared data sets. My 20 patients, Sarah's leukemia trials, Eric's research in Stockholm. 3 independent studies, all showing the same impossible results. Terminal cancer patients recovering through treatment protocols that violated every accepted model. The cellular adaptation isn't random, Eric explained, pulling up microscope imagery. Look at this sequence. The cancer cells follow predictable evolutionary pathways when stressed by treatment. Once you understand the pattern, you can predict their next mutation. I finished, and prevent it. Exactly. Sarah joined us. But it's more than that. The protein markers you identified, they're not just indicators. They're signposts showing us where the cancer will try to adapt next. My hands trembled as I pulled up my latest analysis. It's like they're following an evolutionary program. One that conventional treatment actually triggers, making the cancer stronger. But if we interrupt that program, Eric smiled, we can stop the adaptation before it happens. The implications were staggering. Current cancer treatments often failed because the cancer adapted, becoming resistant. But we'd found a way to predict and prevent that adaptation, to stop cancer from evolving ahead of treatment. My phone buzzed. A message from Tom. Walsh is presenting at Harvard next week, claiming your research was fundamentally flawed. What do you want me to do? I smiled. Nothing. Let her talk. We have bigger plans. Over the next 3 days, we worked around the clock, combining our data sets and refining the treatment protocol. Other researchers joined us. A biochemist from Tokyo, an oncologist from Tel Aviv, a genetic specialist from London. Each brought their own pieces of the puzzle. It's not just one type of cancer, Dr. Yamamoto from Tokyo explained, showing her results. The adaptation patterns are consistent across multiple forms. Breast, lung, leukemia. They all follow these evolutionary pathways. The traditional models missed it, Sarah added, because they were looking for random mutations. Nobody thought to look for patterns in the chaos. On the third day, we presented our combined findings to the conference. The room was packed, not with celebrity researchers or pharmaceutical representatives, but with working oncologists and research scientists, people who cared more about saving lives than protecting paradigms. The data was undeniable. Hundreds of patients across multiple studies, all showing the same patterns. Cancer cells following predictable evolutionary pathways, and most importantly, a treatment protocol that could stop them. My phone rang during a break, a number I didn't recognize. Dr. Chen, this is Dr. James Martinez from the National Cancer Institute. We need to talk about your research, immediately. The next week passed in a blur. Meetings with the NCI, emergency reviews of our data, fast-tracked approval for expanded trials. Then came the call that changed everything. Dr. Chen, the NIH director's voice was grave. We've reviewed the combined data from all sites. This is revolutionary. We're preparing an emergency authorization for your protocol. How quickly can you scale up? I thought of my patients, of Eric's and Sarah's, of all the people who could be saved. We're ready. The news broke on a Thursday morning. Revolutionary cancer treatment shows unprecedented success in terminal patients. My phone exploded with messages. Colleagues, journalists, former patients, and then the one I've been waiting for, Dr. Walsh. Sarah, her voice had lost its condescension. The board would like to discuss your return to Anderson. With full funding and... No thank you, I interrupted. I'm actually heading to a meeting at Mayo Clinic. They're establishing a new research center focused on evolutionary oncology. I'm leading it. The silence was delicious. The next months were intense. Training oncologists in the new protocol, setting up treatment centers, working with pharmaceutical companies to optimize drug delivery. But the results were beyond our wildest hopes. Terminal patients recovering, stage 4 cancers retreating, success rates that made the medical establishment's heads spin. 1 year after my humiliating exit from Anderson, I stood on stage at the World Medical Congress, presenting our results to thousands of doctors and researchers. Walsh was in the audience. I could see her forced smile as the standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. The paradigm shift in cancer treatment, the WHO director announced, begins today. But the real victory came in smaller moments. The mother of 3, given months to live, now cancer-free and watching her children grow. The elderly professor who'd resigned himself to death, back to teaching and full of life. The young athlete who thought she'd never compete again, preparing for the Olympics. Sarah Williams runs the East Coast Treatment Center now. Eric established a European research hub in Stockholm. Tom leads our data analysis team, ensuring that every new case adds to our understanding. Last week, I received a letter that made me cry. Dear Dr. Chen, 10 years ago, my wife died of cancer because the treatments available couldn't save her. Yesterday, I watched our daughter ring the remission bell at your clinic. You didn't just save her life, you gave our family a future we thought was impossible. Thank you for not giving up when they tried to silence you. Michael Chen. I keep that letter in my office at the new research center. Next to it sits a frame containing my dismissal notice from Anderson, signed by Walsh. Together, they remind me that breakthrough moments often look like failure to those too invested in old ways of thinking. The center itself is different from traditional research facilities. We encourage questioning, exploration, new perspectives. Every researcher is taught to look for patterns in chaos, to challenge assumptions, to follow the evidence even when it leads to uncomfortable places. Walsh retired last month. Her replacement at Anderson is implementing our protocol, though they call it by a different name there. It doesn't matter. What matters is that people are being saved. My mother's picture sits on my desk. Sometimes, when I'm reviewing case files late at night, I imagine telling her about all this, about how her death led to discoveries that are saving thousands, about how sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the ideas everyone else rejects. The protein markers we discovered are now standard tests in cancer screening. The evolutionary pathways we map are taught in medical schools. What was once dismissed as worthless research has become the foundation of a new era in cancer treatment. Last month, a young researcher came to me with an unusual pattern she noticed in treatment-resistant cases. The senior staff wanted to dismiss it as anomalous data. Look deeper, I told her. Sometimes the most important discoveries hide in the patterns everyone else ignores. She found something significant, a secondary adaptation pathway we'd missed. Her discovery is already helping us refine the protocol further. The old guard still resists sometimes. Change is hard, especially for those who built careers on previous paradigms. But the results speak for themselves. Every day, patients who would have died under traditional treatments are walking out of hospitals cancer-free. Yesterday, I spoke at a medical school graduation. A student asked what it felt like to be kicked out of my lab that rainy Tuesday morning. It felt like failure, I admitted. But sometimes what looks like failure is actually the first step toward breakthrough. The important thing is to keep following the evidence, even when everyone tells you you're wrong. The war against cancer isn't over. There are still forms we're struggling to treat, still mysteries to solve. But we've changed the rules of engagement. We've learned to predict cancer's moves, to stop its evolution, to beat it at its own game. And it all started with a worthless theory and the courage to follow it wherever it led.